Hello, denizens of podcast land. Welcome to the latest episode of the Fortress of Rock. It is Friday night, May the 10th, 2024. I am your host, the Maestro, Kevin Crane, here for episode 143 of the Fortress. As always, we start off, as you know, with news of the world, our tribute to the late, great Freddie Mercury and his band Queen. So let's get into it. Let's start off, unfortunately, with health news. Some could potentially be good, some is not. And then, of course, we have, as we would expect, the requisite passings and deaths in the world of rock and roll. First up, Brian Wilson, of course, the genius, the mastermind behind the Beach Boys, has been placed in conservatorship. Of course, he has been suffering for quite a while from dementia. And now with the recent passing of his wife and manager, needs to be taken care of. Many, hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions, know what this situation is like. Taking care of parents, grandparents. So we just want to really mention this because we want to send out our best wishes to Brian Wilson. And it looks like everything is in place. He will get the help and the care he needs and deserves. Still, by all accounts, working. Projects, they're going. I don't know if they involve the Beach Boys, but he is still active. He is still creating, so that is good. And then, of course, we have Ozzy Osbourne, who has undergone unbelievable amounts of surgery, procedures over the years. Has said at various times he does not want to perform anymore live. He can't perform anymore live, but you can tell he wants to. You can tell that rock and roll spirit will never die. So he is undergoing stem cell therapy. Again, we hope for the best for Ozzy, just like we do for Brian Wilson. Very controversial, very tricky procedure. And again, I think this all boils down to the fact that Ozzy Osbourne can't let it go. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but whether you're a world-class athlete, a famous NFL star or NBA star entering your 40s, and you just can't keep up anymore, but you feel like you've got to keep pushing and pushing. Look at the examples of people who got out before they destroyed their legacy. Tom Brady got out before he destroyed his legacy. And then don't look at the others like a Jerry Rice. And I know I'm using sports analogies here on a music podcast, but when it's time, be mature enough to know that it's time. We know the cliches. I'll rock till I'm dead. Rock till you drop. I'll sleep when I'm dead. All of them. But Father Time will catch all of us. And maybe Ozzy Osbourne needs to realize that and just settle down. He just got in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a solo artist. Enjoy that for what it's worth. Maybe don't push things. Think about your wife, think about your kids, your family. Hopefully this will end well for Ozzy Osbourne. Now, a couple passings in the world of rock and roll. And again, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame figures out a way to do it the worst possible way. Now, it's not their fault. in this case, like it was with Jimmy Buffett, an egregious mistake, an egregious error, and then a slap in the face to put him in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame this year with a special award after he died. But now they waited and they waited to put MC5 in. And again, another special award. And we've basically had the last two surviving members of the original lineup of MC5 die within the last year. And unfortunately, the last to fall, the latest, is their drummer, Dennis Thompson. So when the MC5 go into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame later this year, there will be no surviving original members. In sports, another sports analogy, sports does this as well. We're going to see this with Pete Rose, guaranteed. Bitterness, grudges, I don't know what it is, but more times than not, whoever's running Hall of Fame, sports, music, whatever it might be, they want to penalize and punish or just blame ignorance. After somebody dies or all the band members die, go, whoops, oh, wow, I guess we should have put them in. Now let's do it. And then we've got, I'm torn on this one. I'm really torn on this one. I know the name. I know what he's done. I'm not overly impressed, to be honest with you. Steve Albini played in a bunch of bands that none of us have ever heard of, but he's a legend. Why is he a legend? Because he produced In Utero by Nirvana. But he is another one of these rock stars that, and I'm not trying to speak ill of the dead, but another one of these rock stars that loves to plead ignorance, or did, after they've done something egregious and terrible. And we'll talk about Mick Jagger in a minute and him becoming like Billy Joe Armstrong and Bruce Springsteen and Eddie Vedder, and he has to get into the world of politics when all we want you to do is shut up and sing. Yes, I am in that camp. The Dixie Chicks way back in the day, yes, I will call them the Dixie Chicks, should have done it. But Steve Albini, here you go. Here's the thing. Way back in the day, in his infinite wisdom, because of course, again, he's a legend for some reason, which I don't get, decided to name his band, one of his bands, Rape Man. And I know I'm trying to keep this clean for the kids, but he literally called his band Rape Man based on an anime character. So that makes it all okay. No, it doesn't. And I don't care if we're living in the ultra sensitive PC era that we're in now, or if it was 20 years ago, or 30 years ago, or 40 years ago. That name is not acceptable in any way, shape, or form at any time in history. But of course, he came out years later and he expressed regret and remorse and, oh golly gee, I really wish I hadn't done that. I'm sorry, but I cannot feel bad for somebody, mourn somebody who had that level of ignorance. So if you want to send out thoughts and prayers to the family and friends of Steve Albini, you go ahead. I can't. And I know it's very petty on my part, I'll admit it. But that, of all the times when I will stand up against political correctness and the hashtag Me Too movement and BLM and all these fake angry groups out there that are only out to make a buck on hatred, Steve Albini is a perfect example of ignorance and what feeds those kinds of groups and dissension and anger and mistrust and hatred in this world. All right, I mentioned Mick Jagger, and yeah, I'm going to wrap up the bad stuff here with this. Mick Jagger, please just stop. I really thought you were better than this. And by all accounts, we talked about it last week. The Rolling Stones, their tour, even though they are very, very old, as we all know, off to a great, great start. Mixing up the set list, playing the classics, by all accounts, phenomenal. Doing a phenomenal job. But then as they play the, arguably, and I will say this, I've never been to it, but arguably one of the greatest festivals in the U.S. every year is the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival. So the Stones played the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival this year. And of course, Mick Jagger couldn't resist taking a shot at Louisiana's Governor Jeff Landry. I'm paraphrasing, but Mick Jagger saying, "Oh, look at all the great, beautiful people out here tonight. It's all inclusive and we love everyone." But meanwhile, Louisiana's governor wants to send us back to the Stone Age. I'm not going to elaborate anymore on how much I hate in concerts, when they've already got a captive audience who've paid hundreds and hundreds of dollars. I hate when bands do this. You want to do it in an interview, you want to do it in your biography, even if you want to put in your lyrics on an album. I'm fine with that. Because I have the right to not buy it and not listen to it. But when I go to for example, Rolling Stones concert to hear Start Me Up and Miss You and Sympathy for the Devil, I don't need to hear Mick Jagger talking about the governor of Louisiana. I didn't pay for that. Good for Jeff Landry, though. He got to dig back in at Mick Jagger on X, of course, formerly Twitter, as he started off his post with the song that the Stones had just finished playing when Jagger took his shot at Landry. Again, paraphrasing. "Hey, Mick, you can't always get what you want. You're always welcome in Louisiana. We'd love to have you here. But I would like to point out that you're probably the only one left who remembers the Stone Age." And again, paraphrasing, but that's pretty close. So kudos to Jeff Landry for sticking up for himself. Wouldn't have to have said anything or done anything if Mick Jagger hadn't started it. All right, let's talk about A&E's biography. I unfortunately do not get it on my current TV streaming service. One of the few channels I do not get. I get YouTube TV. It's phenomenal, but would like to have A&E and the MLB Network. If you're listening, somebody at Google a suggestion. But A&E's biography has been around for a long, long time. Great, great show. And they're doing rock and roll again. They like to come out with a group of rock and roll biographies every so often. So beginning June the 16th of 2024, about a month from now, we will get 5 Sundays. I believe it's Sundays. of A&E's biography featuring rock and roll stars from the late 70s through the 80s into the early 90s. We will have Dee Snider of Twisted Sister, Bret Michaels, Alice Cooper, Sebastian Bach, and Sammy Hagar. Now, those are in no particular order, although I do know that Sammy Hagar's episode will air on June the 30th. So a lot of this stuff we talked about last week, Bon Jovi and the Bob Marley movie. We talked about Duran Duran, that old biography documentary on Netflix, the new Behind the Music episode with Wolfgang Van Halen. Lots going on in terms of documentaries and biographies in the world of rock and roll hitting various TV and streaming channels and platforms. In terms of new music, Mike Campbell, of course, formerly of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, Tom Petty's right-hand man, guitarist extraordinaire, he has a band called the Dirty Knobs. And I do believe early on here, when we started this podcast, I reviewed their last album, External Combustion. Well, they have a new album coming out. Good to see. 2 years later, churn out a new album. That's what we like. Mike Campbell and the Dirty Knobs. Brand new album, Vagabonds, Virgins, and Misfits. Out June the 14th. First single is out. We'll discuss that more, of course, in segment 4. Now, we just talked about Sammy Hagar a minute or two ago. This is for the Van Halen fans out there. I just want to put this out there. This is not necessarily a news item, but involves two of my favorite bands of all time. So the Van Halen news desk, they are struggling to find things to talk about, obviously, since Van Halen is no more. So they cover a lot Mammoth WVH and the drama going on behind the scenes, trying to put together a tribute, and Sammy Hagar's upcoming semi-tribute tour with Joe Satriani, all that stuff. So they sometimes reach a little bit into the archives. Well, there was a certain awesome lead singer for a certain group, interviewed recently on a podcast, who was asked, "We have heard that you were approached." Now we're going back 15, 20 years. "We have heard that you were approached 2 different instances to take over for Steven Tyler as the lead singer of Aerosmith. And then when Sammy Hagar left Van Halen, we heard there was interest from that camp in you coming aboard. And then ultimately they settled on Gary Cherone of Extreme." Very ironic, because we're talking about Corey Glover of Living Colour. In my humble opinion, one of the 5 greatest voices in rock history. I would have loved to have heard what he could have done with Van Halen. And the irony, of course, is the fact that now Living Colour and Extreme bonded together right now on the road, the Thicker Than Blood tour. We gave you a review last year in 2023. They're still out there. Interesting how Gary Cherone took over for Van Halen, but rumors were floating around that Corey Glover was also being considered. Now, Corey Glover says for both the Aerosmith and the Van Halen rumors, I don't know, and I don't think they're true. But, you youngsters out there, keep this in mind. This is why you will always, as a life lesson, remember to ask the pretty girl out, even if you get rejected. Because Corey Glover says, if either one had asked me, I would have done it without hesitation. So again, always ask the pretty girl or the good-looking guy. For you ladies out there, make the first move, because you never know what kind of greatness could be waiting around the corner. Now, tour news. Always have some each and every week. Sometimes we've got a ton. Sometimes just a few little items like this. If you're overseas in the UK, that would be the United Kingdom, for you barbarians out there. Mike and the Mechanics are getting back together for 30 dates over the pond next year. They're already planning way ahead. March and April of 2025. So if you're over in England, merry old England, and you want to check out Mike and the Mechanics, 30 dates for you to choose from. Now, like so many other bands, we know this is not the original lineup. Yes, Mike Rutherford, formerly of Genesis, is still the leader of Mike and the Mechanics, but you will not have the two original lead singers anymore. You will not have Paul Carrick or Paul Young. And then if you want some metal, and we've got metal coming for you in the second segment, but if you want metal, the Full Metal Assault Tour, North America, August through October, 28 dates. Double bill. KK's Priest, of course, that is KK Downing, formerly of Judas Priest, along with Balls to the Wall, Accept. So KK's Priest and Accept, the Full Metal Assault Tour, 28 dates in North America, August through October of this year. So let's wrap things up here with the ladies. Let's talk about the ladies in music. Impressive, very, very impressive number for Madonna. Now, it was a free concert down in Rio de Janeiro, but 1.6 million people attended a recent free Madonna concert in Rio. Not the record. Technically, Rod Stewart, I believe, holds the record, but some people say that was more because there was going to be a fireworks display. Whatever. All I know is my main burning question with this one is, did she show up on time? Because if she didn't, you got 1.6 million people who could sue her. Just kidding. It was a free concert. Nothing to sue for or about. I couldn't resist. Sorry, kids. And then finally, here in News of the World, for the second week in a row, Taylor Swift. Got to talk about Taylor Swift, but not directly. We're not reviewing her music. We're not talking about that. Last week it was more about the charts, the Billboard charts, and the chart records she's setting. Now this week it's more about, once again, speaking about the flaws in the United States ticketing system. Yes, Ticketmaster and Live Nation primarily. Yes, they have problems with bots and scalpers, but sometimes they make their own problems and issues with things like dynamic pricing. Well, as Taylor Swift kicks off the European leg of her Eras tour, we are hearing a lot of stories about fans who are, and I am not kidding you, booking flights, traveling overseas to Europe to go see Taylor Swift, either on their own with their loved ones or parents taking their kids, because even with airfare and hotel stays figured in, it's the same or cheaper in terms of money to go see Taylor Swift over in Europe than it would be just to try to get tickets for someplace here in the United States and then deal with accommodations and airfare here domestically. It's actually the same or cheaper to go over to Europe to see her. How sad is that? How sad is that? And you can understand, if it's the same price, why wouldn't you want to take a trip to a different country and see the sights while you're going to see the concert as well? Instead of staying here and staying at a, it could be end up being a dingy Holiday Inn or a messy Marriott, because God knows service and accommodations here in America, unless you are filthy rich, are very questionable nowadays. And yes, you can do the Airbnb or the Vrbo, but just take this as a lesson, as a statement, and let's hope those good people in Congress, oh, excuse me, got something stuck in my throat there. Let's hope those wonderful men and women in Congress figure out a way to get things fixed. Yes, there are more pressing issues they should be working on, but since they're not fixing those, let's fix the ticketing system in the good old US of A. All right, breakdown coming up next after a quick cheesy music interlude. This is going to be a big one, kids. Double shot concert review. Last Friday, the Big Growl in South Bend, Indiana. And last Saturday, 6 days ago, as we tape on May the 10th, 2024, Judas Priest and Sabaton in Kalamazoo, Michigan, plus 4 new songs to review. A lot going on this week on the Fortress of Rock. You don't want to miss it. We're not even close to being done yet. I'm the Maestro. I will be right back. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Fortress of Rock. It is time for Breakdown. Of course, Breakdown is our tribute to the late Tom Petty and his band, the Heartbreakers. We talked a little bit about Mike Campbell in segment 1. This is a jam-packed, full-on assault breakdown, as we have got not one but 2 massive concert reviews for you and 4 songs. Let us start it up because we got to get going. Got a lot to discuss. So last weekend, if you listened to The Fortress last weekend, that would have been episode 142. Back on May the 3rd, I had to piece things together because usually I'm recording Friday evening. Couldn't do it last Friday because I was heading out to see The Big Growl. The Big Growl is a festival here in South Bend, Indiana, where the Fortress of Rock is based. Local radio station 103.9, The Bear, sponsors it, tries to put it together every year. For the most part, they've done a great job. They've had to move it around a lot recently between the fairgrounds, between the historic Morris Civic Auditorium in downtown. I believe they had it there one year, and now they have it at Four Winds Field, the home of the South Bend Cubs. Yes, the Chicago Cubs minor league affiliate. Now, I've been to the Big Growl before, but the last time I went was with my daughter. It was outdoors at the fairgrounds, so it was hot because it was the middle of July, I believe. And we did not go for the whole thing. I'll tell you, the turnout was phenomenal back then, but it was an all-day affair. I remember we saw Theory of a Dead Man, and then, of course, Stone Temple Pilots, who put on a great show. Now, a little bit more temperate early May, so didn't have to worry so much about the sun beating down on you all day. Show didn't start till 6 o'clock. All worked out well. We had great seats. I will admit, getting older, I'm getting to the point where I cannot do the standing thing for 4 or 5 hours. I can pull it off for a couple, but it's getting to the point where you probably heard me complain last year in all those concert reviews when I had the lawn pass for the Ruoff Music Center down in Noblesville, Indiana. I can't do it anymore. I just can't do it anymore. So we decided to sit back in the baseball stands, even though the stage was out in center field. Still was fine, still worked out perfectly. Now, we missed the opening act because I was very, very, very upset with Four Winds Field. You guys have probably been through this before at some venue. If you go to see 4 or 5 concerts a year, you know what I'm talking about at some point, especially after 9/11 and around the pandemic era, where everything got slowed down and the points of entry bottlenecked, whether it was looking for vaccination cards or a lot of metal detectors and security. But we got there 20 minutes early for a show that was probably going to have, and I think it had at best 3,000 people. My count might be a little off, but that's my estimate. One door open on the north side of the venue and the south side of the venue. And this is a baseball stadium. So pretty ridiculous. So we missed the opening act. Only got a 20-minute set. I believe it was the lead singer for Breaking Benjamin. So we finally got in, finally got to our seats in plenty of time to see the other 4 bands. So the other 4 bands, and again, these were really the ones I wanted to see. So I didn't shed too many tears about missing the opening act. But let's get our act together if you're running one of these venues, and let's figure out a way to not have a line a mile long holding people up so they can't get into the show. If you show up 20 minutes before the show, you should be able to get in if you've got a seat. There's no excuse, no reason for this. But why should I really be shocked in this day and age? So the other acts that we were there to see were Saint Asonia, Fuel, Saliva, and Seether. I had not seen any of them before. Really there to see Fuel and Seether. So we'll start off with Saint Asonia. Now we're not going to break down the entire set list for any of these bands, so fair warning there. But the one thing I did not know about Saint Asonia is that they have the old lead singer from 3 Days Grace. And I like 3 Days Grace. Not one of my favorites, but I like them. Saw them years and years ago playing on a triple bill with Buck Cherry and Nickelback. And they played arguably the two biggest 3 Days Grace hits. Here at the Big Growl, they played I Hate Everything About You, and they played Riot. So I was all into them once I figured out what was going on with the lead singer. And they were pretty solid. I enjoyed them. Then we moved into Fuel. And the thing, along with Saliva, looking ahead to the next band, Fuel and Saliva, the one thing you've got to consider with them, and it hurts both bands. It really hurts both bands, is that you do not have the original lead singer, the lead singer who sang their biggest hits, the songs that we all know and love. So I'm a little more familiar with Fuel. I know some Saliva, but Fuel's current lead singer, who's been there for a while, but they really have not put out anything of significance with this new lead singer. When they played the older stuff, some of it was good. Jesus or a Gun was solid. And of course, they closed it out with Hemorrhage. You knew that was coming. Not bad. Did not play Bittersweet. Little lacking when it came to Shimmer, which is probably my favorite. So I was a little disappointed in Fuel. A little disappointed in Fuel just because if you got to, number one, play more of the older stuff that we know. And number two, get a lead singer who can actually carry that material. And I don't think this current guy can. At least not as well as he needs to. So slightly disappointed in Fuel. Saliva, ugh. Saliva was definitely, to me, the most irritating and disappointing of the night, even though I will give him credit for being very energetic. But I am not into the rap rock thing at all. And outside of the final two songs, which were the ones I was waiting for, Your Disease and Click, Click, Boom, it was just a lot of the screaming, the yelling, rap rock stuff. And then they decided to play some covers. And they literally picked the two worst cover songs, at least personally for me. If I were to be in a torture chair and somebody said, you need to tell us right now to save your family, your friends, your life, the two worst songs anybody alive could ever cover to drive you crazy, I would say Another Brick in the Wall Part 2 and Bulls on Parade. And guess what Saliva played? Yes, Pocket Full of Shells. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah, you guys should know by now I cannot stand Rage Against the Machine, and I cannot stand Pink Floyd. And they played both of those. They covered both of those songs. And I think they threw some Limp Bizkit in there too, which didn't help the cause, help matters at all. So again, I appreciate the energy level that Saliva brought, but outside of the final two songs, did not care for the set list much at all. And then we get to the headliner, Seether, who I'd never seen before. Looking forward to them. Again, like all these bands, not one of my favorites, but always got to open yourself up to new experiences. And Seether was very good. Very, very good. Now, you're not going to get a lot of pyrotechnics and fireworks, and they're not jumping around the stage. They are there to play music, and they do it very, very well. If you like that type of music. The one cool thing that Seether did is that between every song, and I have never seen this before, and I give them ridiculous amounts of respect for doing something different. Between songs, the lights on the stage would go down. They would go black, but they would still be noodling around on the bass or the guitar, almost like a musical interlude. And then they would, after about 20 or 30 seconds, bring the lights back up and go into the next song. It was a really, really cool idea. Again, a lot of respect for Seether for that. Just that little bit of nuance made the show very, very enjoyable. They reminded me in a way of Soundgarden when I saw Soundgarden way, way back in the day at the Wings Stadium in Kalamazoo, Michigan, which we will be talking about in about 2 minutes. Soundgarden was very, very good when I saw them live. The only time I have gotten to see them live, of course, with Chris Cornell passing, that will never happen again. But you love the music, but they didn't really do anything special live. They played the music. That's all they do. They play the music. There's nothing wrong with that. Seether is just like that. Seether, outside of that really cool little trick they pull in between songs, they just play the music, and they play it well. And they've got a lot of good songs. So, in the end, with the big growl, last Friday night, May the 3rd, 2024, I recommend you see Seether. The other bands, maybe Saint Asonia, if you can get in cheap. But with one of these festival types of deals, it's like a potpourri. You like this not so much. This is okay. This is really good. It was worth it. It was worth it. It wasn't overly expensive. Since it was local, we didn't have to drive forever and worry about spending a ton of money on gas and food. So, had a good time at the Big Growl. We'll see what they do with it next year here in South Bend, Indiana. But a very enjoyable Big Growl here, at least with the 4 bands that I saw last Friday night. And then the next night, of course, this would have been Saturday, May the 4th, 2024, at Wings Event Center now. No longer Wings Stadium like it was when I saw Soundgarden there. And yes, when I was little, believe it or not, and I have verified this, I saw Frank Sinatra there. That was technically my first concert ever. I always kind of look at my first rock concert as my first concert, which was Billy Squier and Nazareth, but technically, first concert ever was Frank Sinatra at Wings Stadium in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Now it's the Wings Event Center, still a hockey arena. And for the second time, I saw Judas Priest at the Wings Event Center in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Now, the first time I saw them, Queensryche opened up. The first time I saw Judas Priest was up in Grand Rapids, Michigan at Van Andel Arena, and Sabaton opened for them, and they brought Sabaton back to open for them here on the Invincible Shield tour. Now, Sabaton, let's start with the opening act. Sabaton, I liked them the first time I saw them. They were interesting, they were different. Their songs are all about historical battles in wars. So you have to keep that in mind. And they've got a very unique vocal sound to them where four guys all kind of yelling into the mic like, hoo, 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 hoo. Almost like a military cadence, which is, I'm sure, what they're going for. So the first time you see them, it's interesting. The drum kit, the most ridiculous, outrageous, cool drum kit ever. It is a tank. It is set up to look like a full-size military tank. First time I saw him, and this time. So that is awesome beyond belief. I will say this, though. Once you've seen them once, you see them the second time, it's pretty much the same show. Even though this is many years removed from the last time I saw them. At least 3 years, let's put it that way. One time is interesting, second time gets a little dull. So I'm sorry, Sabaton fans, but didn't really do it for me this time. And unfortunately, it carried over to Judas Priest. Now, I'm not saying Judas Priest was bad by any stretch of the imagination. They will always put on a great, great show. And they change up their set list. So you're not getting the same group of songs every time. They do tend to keep the encore steady, at least the last two times that I've seen them, where you get the Hellion and Electric Eye, Hellbent for Leather, and Living After Midnight, which who's going to argue with that? But now with Invincible Shield out, they throw in 3 new songs from their current album. They lead off the show with Panic Attack, which worked really well, remarkably well, as a lead-off song. So I was all down with that. Then later on, you get Crown of Horns, which I was not down with. I am not a fan of Crown of Horns. It is probably my least favorite song on Invincible Shield. And then a little bit later on, we got the title track, which is fine. But the 15 songs in the main set, very hit and miss. Very hit and miss for me. I will admit, as big of a Priest fan as I am, my fandom only goes back as far as Hellbent for Leather, Point of Entry, and British Steel. I am not a Sad Wings of Destiny guy. I am not a Sin After Sin guy. I am not a Stained Class guy. So if that makes you downgrade me as a Judas Priest fan, so be it. But take that for what you will. So even though we got some songs from my favorite Judas Priest album, of course, Screaming for Vengeance, didn't really get what I wanted from that album. The big problem I had with it was they played Devil's Child, which was fine. Every song on that album I love. But they didn't really seem to have the full throttle energy behind Devil's Child that I would have liked. It came out flat. We did get Turbo Lover, which is always good in concert, as well as Love Bites. But I get really disappointed when they leave out most of their 80s stuff and act like the 80s stuff. Yeah, it made us a ton of money, but we really don't acknowledge it that much anymore. You get very little anymore, if anything, off Defenders of the Faith. No freewheel burning, no heading out to the highway. Very disappointing. And as I told my friend and his sons, the next generation of rockers coming up, who I am so happy that they always want to go see Judas Priest with us every time they come around. That's the most important thing. That these younger people, these guys in their late teens, early 20s, want to see Judas Priest. But I tell them outright, I say, I don't understand why you guys and why the crowd goes crazy for Painkiller. I just don't understand the appeal of Painkiller. It's okay. They closed out the main set with Painkiller. The drummer asks, what song do you want to hear? And everybody's screaming Painkiller while I'm going, heading out to the highway. And again, I didn't get mine, but they got theirs. And some other ones. We got the Green Manalishi, of course. For those of you who want the deep cuts, Rapid Fire, Saints in Hell off of Stained Class. I did not think this was the best set list that I have seen from Judas Priest. But qualify it again and say still better than what you're going to get from 90% of the live acts out there. So Judas Priest, Sabaton Live, I will say I probably enjoyed it a little teeny tiny bit more than the Big Growl the previous night, just because it's Judas Priest. And Rob Halford he's using echo effects with the vocals, and you can understand it. He can hit the high notes, but he can't sustain them, and I have no problem with that. He's not trying to fool anybody like John Bon Jovi. I still want my money back from him, by the way, and I have not finished the documentary yet, by the way, but I will. And it'll infuriate me, I'm sure. But you want to look at somebody who's the exact opposite of John Bon Jovi, that is Rob Halford. Rob Halford cares about his fans. Rob Halford is taking care of his voice. He cares about the integrity of his band. He is still putting out top quality new music. And I told my buddy a couple days after the show, I told him, I said, you know what I would have enjoyed? Honestly, more than the set list they played. I told him, keep the encore. Give us Hellion, Electric Eye, and Hell Bent for Leather and Living After Midnight. But for the main set, play the entire new album. I would have loved to have heard the entire new Invincible Shield album live than all these deep cuts and some of the mediocrities that they threw out there. That's my big complaint. But still a solid show that I should not be complaining about, but somehow I still am. So there you go. The summer concert season has kicked off. Not one, but two reviews for you. But we have got new songs to discuss now here on the Fortress of Rock. All right, new songs. We've taken up a lot of time with the live music. We're going to go a little long here in breakdown, but that's okay. Let's start off with Deep Purple. Now, I will admit I've never been the biggest fan of Deep Purple. I like them, never loved them. Smoke on the Water, of course, arguably the greatest guitar riff in rock and roll history. Some of their older stuff is good, but I will be the first to admit again, I just never got into them. I did get sucked in a little bit with their 80s comeback album, Perfect Strangers. That title track, Knocking on Your Back Door, awesome songs. And I have not really listened to a lot of their more recent stuff either. But for some reason, I was drawn in when I heard that they have another new album coming out. They are still trying, and you guys know I admire this. They are trying to put out new music as often as they possibly can. And that is what artists do. That is what creators do. They create. So the first single from the upcoming Deep Purple album, Equals One, is Portable Door. Now, if you go back and you listen to old Deep Purple, even if you go back to that era that I was discussing in the 80s with their comeback. Now, John Lord, keyboard player, is no longer with us, but you can hear his influence. And whoever they've got playing keyboards for him now, he is mimicking, and I don't mean to say that in any kind of a derogatory manner, he is mimicking John Lord perfectly. Because Portable Door sounds like something that could have come off Perfect Strangers. Latter era, solid, Deep Purple. You got Ian Gillan. He's not shredding anymore, but he knows, he's smart enough to sing what he can sing. Let's put it that way. I think Portable Door is fantastic. Is it an all-time great? Is it going to be on my list of top 5 songs of the year for 2024? No. But very, very enjoyable, very solid first effort here from the upcoming album Equals One from Deep Purple. So I will recommend wholeheartedly you kids go out and you listen to Portable Door. That was actually last Sunday's video we featured on our Facebook page for New Music Sunday. All right, let's go on to Richie Sambora. We've been talking a lot about Bon Jovi lately, probably more than we really should, considering I'm just tired of John Bon Jovi. I don't feel sorry for him. I don't feel bad for him. I feel bad for the fans, including myself and my friends, who got screwed by him going out on tour knowing his vocal cords were shot. I'll let that go for now. And then we have Richie Sambora, who was, depending on who you listen to, unceremoniously kicked out or left Bon Jovi. He has said that he could always tell that John Bon Jovi wanted to be a solo artist. You can tell that a mile away. Now, I'm not ripping on Richie Sambora for that, but you can tell with how John Bon Jovi treats the current incarnation of his band in this 4-part Hulu documentary we discussed last week. I'm still trying to finish it up. Thank You, Good Night is the name of it. That it's all about him. He is an egomaniac. And you get this from actors, you get this from performers, whether it's music, theater, TV, movies. They have egos the size of North Dakota. And Richie Sambora, I'm sure he's got an ego. He's got new music. The first song he has put out, supposedly we've got 4 songs coming here. I know there's a second one out. But the first song he's put out in a while, on his own, is called I Pray. Now let me discuss Richie Sambora as a solo artist for a few moments. I really, really like the album Stranger in this town. I really, really liked it. So I want to qualify what I'm going to say about I Pray with the fact that I know that Richie Sambora is capable of great, great things as a solo artist. Stranger in This Town had so many good songs on it. The title track, Ballad of Youth. He can perform on his own. His voice might leave something to be desired, but so does John Bon Jovi's. So I was kind of encouraged remembering back to Stranger in This Town and how much I love that album. Thinking that let's see if Richie Sambora can catch lightning in a bottle again and show us that maybe as a solo artist he can compete at least on a creative level with Bon Jovi. I don't think the song I Pray will prove that. I Pray is a little fluffy, cheesy. I don't know what he's trying to accomplish with this. It's not really catchy. It's got a little bit of an 80s sheen to it, which normally I wouldn't mind all that much. With Deep Purple, you can go back to what they did in the 80s and you can reinvent yourself with that sound and relive it, and in 2024 it can actually sound good. I don't think with Richie Sambora and what he does, putting on that heavy 80s sheen works very well. I don't think it does. There's nothing about I Pray that's really all that earth-shattering, groundbreaking, and it does not have the catchy hooks or the soulful introspection at some points that you get on what I would call, I know I'm stretching it here, but I would call his classic solo album, Stranger in This Town. It's a classic to me. I, again, thoroughly enjoyed that album, and that's why I Pray is such a letdown. I will tentatively listen to whatever else he puts out here, as he's promised more new stuff over the coming weeks. I will not promise you guys yet that I will review it. That's how disappointed I was with I Pray. So I cannot recommend that to you guys. Let me take the hit on the rest of it. I'll delve into all the new stuff that Richie Sambora puts out over the coming weeks, and I'll let you know if it gets better. Then finally, bonus tracks. This is why I'm always encouraging bands, performers, to put out music from their vaults. Open the vault. Put it out. For better or for worse, we want to hear it. And we're getting there, except for, of course, my big nitpicky moment is that, of course, we can't get anything out of the Van Halen vaults. But everybody else seems to be able to dig in and find some interesting stuff for us. And now the Hives have put out a deluxe edition of Lex Hives with a lot of bonus tracks, most of it live stuff, but 2 tracks that were never released, 2 studio songs. High School Shuffle and Insane. And I'm going to kind of deal with these together. Kind of put these 2 songs into one review, because I'm not saying that the songs are that similar, but I want to point out that the Hives do their best work, their most damage, by keeping it simple. The Hives are not high-minded. The Hives are not trying to tell you who to vote for, how to feel, how to think. They just want you to have a good time, tap your foot, feel the beat, maybe make you laugh with some of their lyrics once in a while. I know I've told you guys I've seen them live, and the energy they put out could light up a small town for 3 days. Let's put it that way. So even though High School Shuffle and Insane did not make the cut for Lex Hives, which I find mind-boggling, consider most of their albums, with the fact that their songs are usually 2 to 2.5 minutes. A 3-minute song for the Hives is an epic. That these songs couldn't somehow make their way onto Lex Hives stuns me. But they're fun. They are very, very fun songs. Exactly what you would expect from the Hives. They probably need a little bit of polishing. I think that's the one thing you can tell if you listen to them, that they got pushed aside before they went through the final mixing, the final engineering. So both of them could have used a little more polish and really would have been, I think, great songs. But as they are, they're good songs. So if you're a Hives fan, definitely worth checking out High School Shuffle and Insane. And if you're not a Hives fan, what is wrong with you? Get out there and listen to the Hives right now, right this second. So first, Portable Door by Deep Purple. That's my number one recommendation for the week. Followed by High School Shuffle and Insane from the Hives. All three of those songs, definitely get out there, listen to them. Stay away from Richie Sambora. Like I said, I will listen to more of his new stuff. Disappointing. I would tell you this. Go out and listen to his old album, Stranger in This Town. I will say it one last time. I promise I'm done. But I never talk about Richie Sambora. So, Stranger in This Town is a phenomenal solo album. I would dare say it is better than any solo material that John Bon Jovi has put out outside of the two big hits from Young Guns. All right? I will say that with all confidence. Stranger in This Town as a whole, that album, better than anything John Bon Jovi has put out solo. Probably better than a lot of the Bon Jovi stuff we've heard over the last 10 or 15 years. And it's better than anything except the two big hits from Young Guns. Of course, Blaze of Glory and Miracle. All right, that is finally going to wrap up Breakdown. I know we went a little long with Breakdown this week, but with 2 concerts, 4 songs, kind of figured that was going to happen. He's tapping his foot in the garage, waiting patiently for me. Yes, Doc Brown wants me to get out there, get in the Rock and Roll DeLorean, and start heading in to the Rock and Roll time stream with him, so we can get into I Want to Go Back, our look at anniversaries of classic albums, birthdays, moments in rock and roll history. It's all coming up after a quick, cheesy 3 or 4 second music interlude. And the Fortress of Rock will be right back. We are in the Rock and Roll DeLorean here on a beautiful Friday night in the upper Midwest outside the Fortress of Rock studios. Doc Brown and I are in the Rock and Roll DeLorean. Rain yesterday, rain tomorrow, but right now it's beautiful, and we have got a clear path to head into the Rock and Roll time stream. Segment 3, as always, here on the Fortress of Rock. I Want to Go Back, our tribute to the late, great Eddie Money. Episode 143 of The Fortress here on May the 10th, 2024. As Doc Brown gets the DeLorean up to 1.21 gigawatts, I will take care quickly of some business here. We've lost a couple platforms over the last few months, but We've still got plenty of options and choices for you where you can find the Fortress of Rock. You can still find us every Friday night, and of course, find all of the past episodes on Spotify, Pocket Casts, Apple, iHeartRadio, Overcast, Amazon Music, Castbox, and Audible. And do not forget to check out the Facebook page. This weekend's Weekend Rock Project is up and running. We give you an idea, a theme, a word, or two in this case. And then we want your favorite, your best songs that fit that criteria. And this time, we've been trying to go simple here for the most part over the last month on the Weekend Rock Project, and it doesn't get much simpler than this. As I look back, we started this in 2021, and we have never, ever, ever simply asked you guys for your favorite songs with rock and or roll in the title. My best friend gave me this idea a couple days ago, so we're going with it. I know I will get flooded, deluged with picks. I would ask just to keep it to the bare minimum, your absolute best, but I know that's never going to work. So just have at it. Rock and or roll. Now, you don't get double points this week for using rock and roll. That is the one restriction I've put on this. That's too easy. If you can find a song with rock twice, roll twice, then you'll get double points. And then, of course, Sunday, you will have New Music Sunday. Every Sunday afternoon on our Facebook page, we post a brand new YouTube video featuring a new song. Got to keep the new stuff flowing. Got to get you guys listening to new music. We do our best with Breakdown. But we also have on the Facebook page New Music Sunday. I have a hint, an idea for what I want to put out there. The only problem is I prefer to put fully formed, fully produced videos out there for you if I can. Last Sunday, I put out the brand new song we just talked about in Breakdown from Deep Purple, Portable Door. But that is a fully produced video with the band performing. Sometimes you got to put out a lyric video or what they call a visualizer video. I hate to do that, but sometimes it's a necessity just to get the song itself out there to you kids. So I think I'm going to end up, it's going to be a lyric video. I'm pretty sure there is a song. We will talk more about it in segment 4. There is a song out there I've only been listening to over the last 24 hours that I am completely and totally in love with. So even if it's only a lyric video, that's what you're going to get this Sunday. But Doc Brown looks at me and mouthing the words, "You're digressing. You're on a tangent again." I get it. So I will get us back on track. But before I do, yes, another tangent. The exception I will always make when we get to I Want to Go Back, I always like to stick with the particular day of this episode. So today is May the 10th. But if a member of the Van Halen family, the extended Van Halen family, has a birthday and it doesn't happen to fall exactly on the date of our episode, I will still acknowledge it. So, 2 days ago, as we tape on May the 10th, May the 8th, the birthday of Alex Van Halen. Happy birthday, Al. Cannot wait to read his memoir, Brothers, coming out later this year. All right, birthdays, anniversaries. What should we start with? What should we do first? Let's start with anniversaries here on May the 10th. An interesting anniversary to start off the proceedings. May the 10th, 1999. Shel Silverstein died. Now, the first thought, of course, would be what does that have to do with the Fortress of Rock? Shel Silverstein, of course, most well known for fantastic, gorgeous kids' books like Where the Sidewalk Ends. But did you know, and maybe this is something that you can bring up at a party? We've got Memorial Day coming up, a cookout, a barbecue, and you can stump your friends and neighbors with this. Did you know that Shel Silverstein, noted children's book author, wrote a lot of hit songs, including Dr. Hook's The Cover of Rolling Stone? Yes, that is Shel Silverstein. And he won a Grammy for writing Johnny Cash's biggest chart hit, A Boy Named Sue. I did not know this until I did my research. I've told you guys this in the past. I love learning new things as I set up each and every week's podcast episode. So stump your friends and neighbors with that. Shel Silverstein, not only a great legendary author of kids' books, but a very, very important songwriter in the world of music and rock and roll. May the 10th, 1991. Madonna's tour documentary film, Truth or Dare, premiered on this day in 1991 in Los Angeles. 2 hours late. Sorry. Couldn't resist. Sorry. 2 hours late. May the 10th, 1986. Oh, Tommy Lee. What a life he has led. That's all I'll say. On this day in 1986, Tommy Lee, drummer for Motley Crue, married the beautiful Heather Locklear, television star, of course. And like all of Tommy Lee's marriages, doomed to fail, but still. Tommy Lee marries Heather Locklear on this day in 1986. 1 year earlier, May the 10th, 1985, arguably, and I don't know how much argument there is here, arguably the greatest female rock band ever. Some would say the Runaways. I get it. You might get a few votes for the Bangles. But on this day in 1985, the Go-Go's broke up for the first time. They did end up getting back together years and years later. I'm sure because money was involved. Lucrative reunion tour, that type of thing. And then finally, May the 10th, 1974, even though I've disappointed you this week, I had not finished the Paramount Plus hit movie from theaters a few months back, Bob Marley, One Love. On this day in 1974, one Eric Clapton recorded his version of Bob Marley's I Shot the Sheriff. And it became Eric Clapton's only number one U.S. hit song. All right, there are your anniversaries for you. Let's move on to birthdays on May the 10th. May the 10th, 1968, Richard Patrick was born. Richard Patrick, lead singer, played guitars for Filter. And I know they're still out there. They're still around. Most notable for the great, awesome song, Hey Man, Nice Shot. Their biggest hit was Take a Picture. Ugh. Not terrible, but you know how I feel about ballads and that sellout, slower stuff. And then we pull out the big guns for the next couple birthdays. Kind of shocks me he's only 5 years older than me, given what he has accomplished in his life. Born on May the 10th, 1960. Paul Hewson was born. You kids, as well as me, know him better as Bono. Of course, lead singer of U2. Then we go back 3 more years, May the 10th, 1957. John Ritchie was born. Who is John Ritchie? Again, like Paul Hewson, we know this man better by another name. We know him as the bass player of the Sex Pistols. Yes, Sid Vicious, born on this day in 1957. Now, I will fully admit the Sex Pistols are not my cup of tea, but I respect them in the annals of rock history, but only to a certain point. The drug abuse, I am not a big fan of how Hollywood and the media glorifies that type of stuff. And we all know that came into play big time with Sid Vicious. And we had the tragic love story of Sid and Nancy and all that. Drugs are destructive. Drugs are harmful. End of story. They should not be romanticized. Going back to May the 10th of 1947. Couple birthdays for you. Dave Mason played in Traffic, briefly played in Fleetwood Mac. To most of us, I would think, especially if you grew up in my era, getting into music in the mid to late 70s, we remember him for his big solo hit, We Just Disagree. The theme song of my life. On that day, on that year, 1947, May the 10th, Jay Ferguson was born. Again, just like Dave Mason, you got to remember the era we're talking about here, mid to late 70s. Now, before that, Jay Ferguson played in the band Spirit. But we would again all know him, just like we probably know Dave Mason for We Just Disagree. We know Jay Ferguson for the song Thunder Island. And I always listen to that song a little bit quieter than any other song because, of course, he said during the song, making love. Ooh, ooh. And if you're 11, 12 years old, you didn't want your parents to know back in the mid 70s you were listening to a song where they said making love. But I'm also going to give you yet another piece of trivia involving Jay Ferguson to stump your friends, your family, your neighbors. Once again, found out something I did not know researching this episode. So Jay Ferguson played in Spirit, had the big hit solo song, Thunder Island. Did you know that he composed the theme song for the U.S. version of The Office? Yes, Jay Ferguson composed that little ditty that so many of us know and love, that starts off each and every episode of The Office with Steve Carell. Once again, I've given you two things now. Get ready for that Memorial Day cookout. You will be able to stump everybody as they're chowing down on ribs and drinking adult beverages. Then we go back to May the 10th, 1946, the birthday of Donovan. Donovan, most well known for the hits Sunshine Superman and They Call Me Mellow Yellow. Yes, Mellow Yellow. Then finally, to wrap up birthdays here on May the 10th, on the Fortress of Rock, 1938, Henry Fambreau. Rock solid all the way through, beginning to end, pretty much. He was with the Spinners, one of those great R&B bands. The consistent, always there, and you don't get that a lot with these bands. We've heard stories about lawsuits. We've heard about it in rock and roll with here recently with Grand Funk and Burton Cummings. That's the Guess Who. The Spinners and all these other Motown type bands, the Temptations, a lot of them, none of the original members, not sanctioned by any of the original members or the estates or the families of any of the original members. So the fact that Henry Fambreau was with the Spinners almost from beginning to end is remarkable. And that will do it for I Want to Go Back. Doc Brown wants to linger in the sunshine here while it lasts. I can't blame him. But we've got to pull the rock and roll DeLorean into the garage here at the Fortress of Rock, pull the drawbridge up over the moat, and start to shut things down here on Friday night. But you know we're not done yet. Wrap It Up is next. Talking about the songs, the albums, maybe the concerts we're going to be reviewing over the next month here on the Fortress, and our number one album and our top songs of the week. A few seconds of cheesy music, and I will be right back. All right, we're turning the lights down, getting ready to settle in for a nice, peaceful, and quiet weekend. Ha! Full of rock and roll. Are you kidding me? But here on Friday night, May the 10th, 2024, episode 143 of the Fortress of Rock, final segment, Wrap It Up. Our tribute to the fabulous Thunderbirds. Yes, we are wrapping it up. But we've still got about 10 minutes left to discuss the future of music. We've talked about the past. We've talked about the present. Now it's time to pull out the crystal ball and look into the future. So for the next month here on the Fortress of Rock, this is what you've got to look forward to. Next week, our featured album review will be Sebastian Bach, Child Within the Man. Just got my copy delivered a few hours ago. Episode 144 next Friday, May the 17th. And then the week after that, I also have my copy just delivered along with Sebastian Bach in my hot little hands. Kings of Leon, their brand new album, Can We Please Have Fun? That will be the following week, episode 145, dropping May the 24th. And then, of course, I'll need some extra time because it's a double album. But in 3 weeks, the last day of May, May the 31st, 2024, episode 146 of the Fortress of Rock, that will feature the double album from Collective Soul. We'll talk about that more in just a minute. Collective Soul's double album Here to Eternity. Our full review on May the 31st. Now we're going to go back. I know we said we're talking about new stuff, but in a way this is new stuff. Brand new releases, but they're looking back. Not sure which one I'm going to do yet. 4 weeks out. Episode 147 on June the 7th, 2024. Got a couple to choose from. There is a short but sweet album coming out called Rat Rarities, featuring the first ever version of Round and Round, the rough cut in the studio. First ever version of Round and Round is featured on Rarities from Rat. The only problem I have with this is that there's only 9 tracks. Most of them are live songs that we know. Not really a lot of new stuff here. I would have expected more. This would have been cooler in a 2 or 3 CD box set with a lot more of the live stuff and the demos and the rarities. So it's a very, very spare set. And then for fans of Triumph, this has been delayed a couple times, but I have got information now that this is firmed up, coming out on May the 31st. So this could end up being the feature review. It's either this or Rat Rarities on June the 7th. Rick Emmett of Triumph. Now, when Triumph kind of split, he left the band. They did one more album without him. Didn't go very well. And like Cinderella, it's one of those bands that never could pull back together. Now, Cinderella had contractual issues with record labels. Triumph just could never get back together except for a one-off concert here or a one-off concert there. But Rick Emmett went on his own for a while. And a lot of us, and myself included, did not really listen to his solo work. Now, more recently I have, but we're getting a reissued compilation called Diamonds. The hard rock years 1990 to 1995 from Rick Emmett. So I am very intrigued by this, being a huge, huge Triumph fan. So this is tearing me apart here. Triumph or Rat? Rat or Triumph? 2 bands that I absolutely love. We'll get to both of them. But 4 weeks out, one of those 2 is going to be your featured album review of the week on Breakdown. Now let's move on to our top album and top songs of the week. Of course, we added this part to wrap it up at the beginning of 2024 as my tribute to what used to be the great and glorious Billboard charts. Not so much anymore. Ever since in the early 90s, they went to SoundScan. They also went to hell. Pardon my French. You knew this was coming since I just saw Judas Priest. I warned you. I'm kind of surprised it didn't take over the number 1 album spot, at least for now, for more than 1 week. But with Sebastian Bach now and Kings of Leon, probably a 1 week only revisiting of the number 1 slot on the Fortress of Rock's album charts. Judas Priest, Invincible Shield, is our number 1 album of the week. Now we move on to songs, and you know I cheat. The top songs of the week. I usually throw two at you. But again, I'm kind of shocked, kind of surprised. I was thinking about throwing a couple Judas Priest songs in there. Panic Attack, because it was so good as the opening song live, as we discussed back in the breakdown segment. And then I got to tell you, the deluxe edition is so good. The 3 extra songs on Invincible Shield, the deluxe edition, are so good. And The Lodger, the final song. I just don't understand how these songs couldn't make the cut for the regular album. I know. Money, 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 money. But no. There will be no Judas Priest here in your top songs of the week. Instead, we go with, first off, I told you back in the breakdown segment, I was impressed with this song. Deep Purple's Portable Door will share the honors for top Fortress of Rock songs of the week here on May the 10th, along with, I cheated a little bit here. I don't like to do this to you kids, but new stuff now comes out on Friday. I miss the old days when new music came out like DVDs, Blu-rays still do on Tuesday. So now they've shifted new music to Friday. Since we record on Friday, makes things a little tricky. But the second release from Collective Soul, the double album Here to Eternity, just came out earlier today. I have listened to it at least half a dozen times already, not enough to give you a full review. So that's where I feel a little guilty, is that even though I'm going to put this up there with Portable Door as my top songs of the week, I will not have an official review of this song until next week. But the second release from Collective Soul, Here to Eternity, the song is ridiculously good. Bluer Than So Blue. I know, you hear the title and you're, was that a ballad? No. This is what Collective Soul does. They have a sound, they have a formula. And you might think that sounds boring and dull. Not when it comes to them, because they always tweak and change this formula and always make it refreshing and interesting. Now, with Mother's Love, I have called them out on that, even though I enjoyed it. I said I thought the guitar riff was directly cribbed from Where the River Flows. Bluer Than So Blue is what I wanted. It's them, but it's new. You've got to listen to this to understand what I'm saying. We'll get into more detail on it next week. But your top songs this week on the Fortress of Rock are Deep Purple's Portable Door and Collective Soul's Bluer Than So Blue. Now, I'm still promising at some point to finish up the Bon Jovi documentary, Thank You, Good Night, and the Bob Marley movie, One Love. Even though halfway through both of them, I am not impressed. Still looking forward to giving you the review of the double-sided Hold Steady release, The Death of the Punchline and Radar and Leda. Don't know, again, if this is going to lead into a full album or this is just kind of a quirky thing. Mark Knopfler. This hit last Friday. Didn't get really a good chance to talk about it again with the recording issues that I had last week, having to get things done way ahead of time because I was heading out to see Seether Mark Knopfler on Record Store Day a few weeks back put out an EP. Of course, he just put out a brand new album, One Deep River, but he also now has put out an EP. You can buy it on digital, 4 songs called The Boy. And I'm hoping to review that for you here coming up soon. It is a short thematic concept album, from what I can tell, about an aging boxer. A band that we discovered here thanks to a friend of ours over the last year or two, the Cold Stares. Still looking to review Horse to Water, their new song. We mentioned Collective Soul, of course, Bluer Than So Blue. Definitely next week we'll have the full review for you. I somehow think it's going to be pretty positive, considering it's one of our top songs this week. And then finally, we talked about in segment 1, Mike Campbell of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, his band, the Dirty Knobs. The new LP is Vagabonds, Virgins, and Misfits, out June the 14th. The first single off that album, and I believe this one features Graham Nash. The first single is Dare to Dream. So that will be another song we'll be reviewing very, very soon here on the Fortress of Rock. So that will do it as the sun sets here outside the Fortress of Rock studios. Everything is locked down, shut up, drawbridge pulled up from over the moat. Time to settle in, enjoy the weekend, maybe have an adult beverage or two. I hope you do as well, but do it responsibly. Don't drink and drive. And of course, love the one you're with. I am the Maestro, Kevin Crane. You are who you are. And we will talk to you again about the music we all love in 7 days on May the 17th. But now I must bid you a fond farewell. Take care, kids.